Hello and welcome back to Factorial. My name is Nasty. Today's video, I want to talk through a common myth that I see propagated quite a bit on both the subreddits, on the main Factorial Discord, and then other just in general places where we talk about mega basing. What we're talking about today is pollution. So I've talked a good amount about this in previous videos, but one specific point I have not addressed. What happens if the pollution cloud, you just let it grow indefinitely? And assuming that you do a bunch of things, which we'll get further into, like removing trees and things like that, would that just be better than using agriculture towers to control it? So I'm going to prove today why it is better to use agriculture towers for this. So first, I want to kind of give a visual indicator of how we think about this. So first off, if you imagine your entire base as a square, this is the edges of the map, right? You're going to have pollution that's going to be contained within that. As the pollution grows, you're going to expand the edges of the map to fill that pollution cloud. Of course, it's going to continue to grow and grow until eventually the tiles that are contained within that cloud completely encompass the amount of pollution that you're emitting. So I'm going to present you now with the latest version of my megabase. In this megabase, I have scaled up the amount of pollution that we're creating so that we can go and generate enough pollution for me to be able to do a strict test to compare at scale how much of the pollution cloud actually matters. So in order to do that, I'm going to show another visual indicator here. We're emitting right now a total of 1,085,000 total pollution. The largest consumer of that is currently biolabs at about 68% of that entire pollution cloud. So let me switch over to Novice so that I can explain how we've changed Novice in order to account for this test. Now, in previous videos, all you've seen for this megabase was that we were at a target of around 5 million effective science per minute. So in order to generate enough pollution for this test, I wanted to get to a high enough rate. Originally, this started off with me wanting to get to 20 million effective science per minute for mining prod. And so you'll see that there are these new outposts here that I will cover in a later video on how these work. But basically what they do is they create 480 science per second of purple, blue, green, and red. These are from all the competition series that we've had. These have been some of the best designs that we created. And I've opted for not doing the on-patch stone variant, mainly just due to simplicity of routing and the time it would have taken to go and create this video. So as I was going and creating this and scaling this up, we have these lab clusters, and I realized pollution was getting quickly out of control. So I had to very quickly pivot from the very first version 1 design that did not incorporate tree farms, which you're going to see down here, did not have sections for tree farms at all, to the latest design, which is up here, which actually has pollution control built in between the labs. And you'll see that we have these farms here that are located on the left and the right that are controlling and holding down the pollution. So this is what we did. So did I actually hit the number? We got very close. We are currently researching at 19 million effective science per minute, which is a massive number. That is almost a 4x increase over the capacity that we had before. So production stats, because those are fun to go and look at. If we look at currently what we're producing for science, we're making 806,000 science per minute. Now, this is a very cheap science. I recognize that. This isn't something that we should say, this is what you should design your whole mega base for. Researching 50,000 mining productivity is probably an absurd number. I agree with this. However, why not do it? It's fun as hell to go and generate a gigantic base that produces a really, really large number of science, because that number is just fun anyway. So cool part is we are producing almost, we're close to the target rate that I wanted. We are just slightly off. But the main thing that I wanted was that total pollution stat that I showed a minute ago, being able to produce 1 million pollution per minute. You'll notice this is in this save file snapshot, we are actually absorbing almost completely all of the pollution just by trees dying. So those are all those agriculture towers that are everywhere that are constantly picking up and removing the trees just in time so that the pollution is being absorbed. So once I hit the million pollution per minute number, I pivoted from my goal of hitting 20 million science per minute, and I said, or ESPM to be strict, and I said, hey, this would be a cool point to go and say, what happens if I turn off all the agriculture towers? So that's actually very easy to do for this test. I have a centralized location in 2.1 with using the new radars that can have individual channels for their tree seeds. So, or like for a signal ID. So the signal ID in this case is a tree seed. The tree seed is going to be the channel that controls all of the agricultural towers. So in order to actually create this setup, all I have to do is remove this one green wire and all of the individual towers will all shut down. These only run for about 30 minutes after mining prod has shut down and while mining prod is running. Again, out of scope in terms of how I determine this, but I am reading from the lab. I know what research we're currently running, and that turns on all the clocks that control all of the outposts that we have. So that controls every single one of these outposts here are all controlled by centralized clocks. This makes it very easy for this test because I just have to turn them off. In addition to that, there are other agricultural tower setups. Predominantly, there's one around the core lab production area. There's one around red and green science. And there's some around the purple science area as well. So let me show you now the second problem that I have. How do I visually represent the pollution cloud? Because this is what you get in the vanilla version of Factorio. You get this nice little red absorption or size of this. However, this gives me such a tiny resolution. This does not tell me how effective my tree farms are. This does not tell me how good they are going to be performing in order to reduce the pollution that's in this area. Specifically, anytime the pollution gets above 150, it is this big red blob. Anything below 150, there's this tapering off function where you can see that there's like a little bit of a resolution here for a heat map. In this scenario, we are producing way more pollution in this area. Like I know this area here has 18,000 pollution in one chunk. So you think about that, I'm losing the full resolution from 150 to 18,000. So how did we solve this? So a couple weeks ago, a guy on my Discord named Napomat messaged me and said, hey, I've been working on a different kind of mod for pollution. This was one of the main reasons that inspired this video. And you're gonna see that here live in action. This is not available yet on the main mod portal, but it will be uploaded soon after this video goes out. We're refining some things. So I worked with him back and forth and we made some refinements to it. But here's, for reference again, the main pollution cloud that you can see when you're looking at this. Notice the resolution you get. I'm going to turn this off. We have a new heat map button. What this does is very cool. All of a sudden now we have a graph that scans all of the chunks in a given area, calculates the maximum that we have for pollution control, or like for pollution within that chunk, and then we can set a boundary of what we're going to ignore. You'll see that at the edges. I don't care about anything that's less than or equal to 100. These are just the edges here that are eventually, I know within a certain radius, this is going to shut down and this will be absorbed by the actual tiles here. That's completely fine. This is incredibly useful. You immediately can tell where I have placed tree farms around the entire sector of this base. Any of these blue areas are areas that are actually being actively reducing the pollution. Notice here, there's a large amount of tree farms that are in this area, right? We can see them here from the map. You'll notice that here, over on the right-hand side, you're seeing a large amount that is in the higher amount of pollution that is immediately getting cut off due to the absorption of the pollution that's in this area. This mod has actually been very instrumental in me optimizing the amount of tree farms that I actually have. A common thing that I see across a lot of different base designs is they make one of two different assumptions. One, or two different design principles. One, they'll surround their entire base with tree farms. This is not really effective because you have to wait until the entire pollution cloud expands into that confined area. Also, the perimeter of your entire base gets larger and larger over time. So you're wasting a huge amount of additional agriculture towers that you need to surround your base. Here, so the second way that I've seen this being done is people say, I'm going to throw agriculture towers completely out. I'm going to create a island map, which is a spawn that you can do, and I'm just going to let pollution grow out into the water indefinitely. This video is going to prove why both of those methods are not good, but I'll quickly cover why method 1 is subpar compared to some of these smaller segmented areas. So you'll notice here, all that I've defined is a small little grid section. I'm allowing the pollution cloud to grow out in this direction because I know that I have a good amount of distance here to cover that pollution cloud spread. I don't need to fully encapsulate it. So I create a wall here that prevents it from going too far out over to the left. And this is enough to fully encapsulate the amount of pollution that I effectively need to have while not having too many agriculture towers. Agriculture towers do have a cost to them in terms of entity update time. Now we're clocking these very heavily, so they're only enabled 1 out of every 768 ticks, which is exactly the amount that you need so that it always picks up and plants 1 tree at a time right when it hits its 100% growth rate. So that is the goal of any of these, is to, when this hits here 100%, and exactly when it hits 100%, you'll see that this agriculture tower picks it up. That spreads out the growth time so that hopefully by the time the tree actually has grown, it dies. Or it has absorbed as much pollution as it possibly could, and you pick it up so it can plant an absolutely brand new one. Quick basics on that. So these little wall perimeters are incredibly useful to just create bounding boxes where the cloud will not spread further out into. So I'm proposing that this is the best method to do that, but tuning that with the default view that you have is suboptimal at best. From this view, I have no idea that I have too many trees in this area. But once I go and add this heat map to this, it's very obvious that I have way too many tree farms in this particular location. I have like an overkill amount of pollution that is being absorbed in this area with respect to the way the cloud is forming around this area here. So this is going to be the visual indicator that we're going to use to track as I turn off the agriculture towers. And we're going to look at a snapshot in time of what happens in terms of actual UPS numbers as we progress in this. Now, let me talk about a couple problems you're going to have with that. One, it's nice that I can be running at about 140 UPS. That means that for every hour that passes in the game, it's going to be about 25 to 30 minutes that's going to pass in real time. So in order for this pollution cloud to grow, it's going to take in the order of hundreds of hours. The problem is, as you'll see, is that the pollution update number right now is on average about 0.14, 0.145 microseconds or 145 microseconds of update time. What happens over time as the pollution cloud grows, you're going to have that number is going to increase over time. So our UPS number is going to drop. So that means that we're going to get closer and closer to real time running the base. So that's a problem because that limits how long I can simulate this for. The good news is we're going to get enough of a sample data to prove the point, but we're going to cut it off right at around the 145, 150 hour mark. And we're going to say that's enough of data that we have captured for this. So those caveats aside, the main things that we're going to be monitoring is what happens to the pollution update time and how much does it increase once we remove the agriculture towers. So with that being said, let's get directly into the data. Let's go look at the snapshots over time, and we'll see what happens as the cloud continues to grow. So I've created this graphic to help illustrate all the different snapshots we took of the base. Quick overview, what you're going to see is on the right-hand side, there's going to be a chart that represents the tile absorption on the x-axis. So that's in the 1,000 pollution per minute, which I'm calling kppm. And on the y-axis is going to be the update time in microseconds. That's how much time the game is taking per tick to go and render or calculate the pollution update time. So on the left-hand side, you're going to see a screenshot of the current base from the map view. with that heat map that I just talked about a second ago. So we're starting off here, and the metrics I want you to focus on is the hour marker. That's not represented on the right-hand side, so I'm just representing it on the left to give you an idea of where we are at in terms of time. So at hour 0, we are at a point where the tiles are absorbing 48.5 thousand pollution per minute. This is exactly the point where we just left off with the previous section where I was talking about the actual save file. This is exactly the point where we turned off every single tree farm and we let all the trees die. So up until this point, we were absorbing 95.5% of the pollution was being absorbed by killing trees. So, and only 4.5% of that was being absorbed by pollution. So one last metric that I want you to kind of pay attention to is the maximum chunk pollution. It's not really important. It gives us a point of reference of what is the most red section of the left heat map. That is going to be dictated by the maximum value within one chunk. So that means that we're starting off with 18,000 pollution within one chunk. That's the maximum that we have observed at this point. So let's move forward in time a bit. So I'm going to skip ahead. We're going to go to hour 2, and then we're going to go up until hour 4. So I took snapshots at more incremental points up until this point of hours 2, 3, and 4 to get us kind of an idea of where we were going to be at. So the update time here is going to be, we've increased ever so slightly, not a huge difference right now, but you're already starting to see that the pollution cloud is starting to concentrate. It's starting to get closer towards the center. All of the hot spots are starting to converge. That's because we're not anymore controlling the shape of the cloud. We're letting it grow unbounded. So eventually this will form a circle, which is to be expected. So not much has changed. Update time hasn't increased too much after about 4 hours. Now, let's continue this progression as we go into the later stages. So we have hours 8, and then we'll continue into hour 15. So now we're seeing at an hour 15 mark that the tile absorption at this point has increased twofold. And actually our update time, if you look at where we had started, we are about 100 microseconds of update time that we've added just over the course of about 15 hours. Our maximum chunk pollution has drastically increased from 18,000 to 67,000. And now we have actually the edges of the map are starting to expand because the pollution cloud is actually now at this point growing well beyond the point I had ever let the pollution cloud grow until. So we'll continue forward in time to hour 20. So at this point, we're starting to see a pattern. We're seeing that the pollution update time metric is starting to grow over time. However, we encounter a problem now. The cloud is now greater than the default max zoom distance in remote view. So I had to create a new set point that had to be activated so that we had a new max distance zoom level. So I had to set it via console command to allow me to zoom further out in the map view. So I've set the zoom level to 50,000 so that we can see much more of the map itself. What you're going to see is that I'm going to start us back off at zoom level 0 so that we get a point of reference of where we actually started. So reminder again, this is the save file you just saw a second ago. We're only at 4.5% of total pollution that's being absorbed by tiles and a microsecond update time of 140. Let's jump ahead to the 45-hour mark. So now we're seeing that the pollution update time has doubled to 352 microseconds over the 140 that we had before. Strictly speaking, it would have been 280 would have been a doubling. So this is almost 1.5x that we had, or a 2.5x multiplier that we had here to get us to the 352 mark. So we now see that we have a much larger pollution cloud as a result, and actually a much bigger save file at this point. Keep in mind, we've doubled the update time, but we are nowhere close to the amount of pollution that we're going to need to absorb. We're only at 13.2%. So I'm going to let this continue to progress as we continue on with these hour marks until we get to the final 145 hour mark where I end the simulation. So you're seeing here that the update time is pretty linearly increasing over time, and we're still nowhere near the amount of pollution that we really need to be absorbing at this point. So I will end it at this point here. Why did I end it at 145 hour mark? Well, at this point, the game is running at about 120 updates per second. For me to go and realistically simulate this, the estimation here to let this grow unbounded with all the trees removed is going to take probably at least 2 times the amount of hours that you see here. So that would be in the order of about 300 hours or so that it would take to simulate this. That'd be about 150 hours of real time, but that's going to taper off as the update time continues to increase. The simulation is going to get slower. So realistically speaking, if you would go and say, all right, let's say let's give it a smudge factor. We'll say 150 times 1.3 just to kind of account for like the slowdown over time. That would be 195 hours, and that would be about 8 days of real time to get to the 100% mark. And that's still not a guarantee. So I am going to cut off the experiment here. I think the point has been proven that as the pollution cloud grows, you're going to incur a very large increase in the update time metric. So I'll take you back to this save snapshot, the 145 hour mark, and I'll give a couple other points to show how big this cloud really is. Because the metric or the graph that you're seeing on the left doesn't really give you an idea of how big this truly is. So here we are at the 145 hour snapshot. For looking at pollution update now, we're seeing that it is on average here 0.8, 0.9, and this will fluctuate over time depending on just basically how much stuff is going on currently in the save file. And so these were the numbers that I was pulling for this, and I was just taking a snapshot at the point in time when this was running. So when we're looking at this overall, if we go back over here to novice, you can now see how big this is. And just to kind of give like a point of reference, here's a Spidertron that's just, around here that's in this particular area. So if I look at where my Spidertrons are, to give you an idea, and let's just make the game go to, I don't know, the normal speed. So we'll go in default speed here for this. Let's just look at how long this will take to come over to this edge of the map. This is real time, by the way. These are very highly accelerated Spidertrons. They are moving pretty quick because they have an equipment grid that actually has the legendary, the legs things that makes them go faster. I can't remember the name of it. These beautiful things. Here, the exoskeletons. So they got those in there. And if we tell them, just to kind of go there, we'll see how long this takes as I'm talking through this, but let's give them like a relatively clear path so that they can get to the edge of the map. And I guess these got already stuck by some water. So good job, pathfinding. So let them go and do that. And that's just okay. So I've set them on a course to go in that direction. So the boundaries of this, if I go and create a point here, this is negative 10,000 tiles or 10,000 meters in the left-hand direction. And on the right, this is about 11,000 tiles in the right-hand direction. So this means that we have a radius of about 10,000 tiles or 10 kilometers in all directions here. Again, just to prove the point, Pollution Cloud is nowhere near giving you enough information to understand this. So we'll stress test this poor pollution metric here with having to go and generate and plot every single chunk along this entire area here. And there you'll see the nice shape of the cloud. So we'll go and get rid of that again so that these guys, Spidertrons, can move in real time. But you're seeing just how long this journey is going to take. This is in the order of several minutes to get from where they started all the way out to the edge of the map, traveling as a pretty relatively fast Spidertron. So that's just kind of how big this is. And truly is that the update time for pollution has shown a measurable impact. So the question you might be asking at this point is, well, great, you've shown the pollution update chart and how much that has impacted. You've shown a linear correlation with that. You may be asking at this point, what will be the entity update time and how much was there a cost of the agriculture towers? I'll give you a rough estimate here in a second. But keep in mind, we would need 3 times this amount of pollution update time in order to absorb the full pollution that we are currently producing. So we're in the orders of 2x pollution update time. That is that is like almost like 60%, 70% of my entity update time across the entire save file. That's a massive number. So when I go and let's say we looked at this, let's go and just kind of compare here where we were at with this gigantic heat map. And did those Spidertrons actually make it? They did. They finally made it. So if you were measuring it on the time, that's about how long it took to get to the edge of the map. So here, this is where the pollution cloud was. Let's go back to the old save file and let's look at where we started with the actual trees running. So here we're at this save file. This is before I expanded the ability to zoom further out, so apologies, you're gonna have to see a more cropped in version of this. You can see just how different this pollution cloud, we've shown that difference now. We're back to the 18,000 that we had. And if we're looking at the total update time, like we're hitting in the above 140, hitting 150 UPS. Before, we were at 130 was max what we were hitting. So that means on average, you're seeing these little dips. What are those dips coming from? So let's go and I'll show the entity update time for this. Those come from agriculture towers. Without a doubt, they have a spike update time that happens. On average, they are 0.01 update time that is being taken by them. But you see these large waves of the agriculture towers that come in and then start getting consumed over time because they're all sharing that one clock. You could average them out. You could separate their clocks so that they're actually a little bit desynchronized so that you have a more smoother UPS. Not really a concern for me as I'm still way above the 60 UPS mark that I care about. So, but you are seeing that the agriculture towers are running. The maximum they ever spike up to is about 0.5 here of update time, and then that quickly tapers down. So the cost here on average is less than 0.1 milliseconds of update time. So with those spikes included, even with that, if you added those two together, remember, we were going to shoot for about 3 milliseconds of update time was probably where we were going to be at by the time the pollution cloud grew all the way together. If you add this, and let's assume the worst case of it taking a 0.5 millisecond update time spike that we're seeing here. So if I have added that to the current pollution update time statistic that we have, which over here is going to be the 0.2 that you're seeing just on average is floating around, and it really on average is 0.158 per tick. That means that you're going to be at about 0.6 pollution update at the worst spike you could possibly have. At 30% of the pollution cloud growth, we were at already 1 millisecond of update time. That means that we are effectively, at the worst case scenario, still better than only 33% of the actual pollution cloud being absorbed. So I'm very confident to be able to say at this point that the best way to actually control pollution is definitely with agriculture towers. It's not just letting the cloud run forever. It's not using the piddly amount of pollution that is being currently absorbed by the captive biter spawners. And at this point is also not just letting those trees forever just go and expand, because there's a cost associated with having those trees just sitting there. We have 60 million trees here that are just passively absorbing pollution. And if you look at this here, there's about 11 billion trees that have impacted over 250 hours. I guess the better way to look at this metric's a little weird. It's like, I guess it's like the total cumulative count of the trees that were damaged over a 5-second period. You have to divide this by 5. So I guess there's like, in essence, about 20,000 trees or so that are currently being damaged compared to the 400 or so that are currently just passively absorbing pollution. So if you go and you just have this, like the number of actual trees just passively being alive is nowhere near enough to actually absorb the pollution that you're going to need. And I can prove that if we go back to the other save file snapshot, because I kept all of these trees that you're seeing here within the save file. The only trees I removed were at the edges of the save file, and I turned off the generation of those. So I go back to the 145 hour mark. You're seeing here at this point that the amount that is actually being absorbed by the trees that are just passively sitting here is still the same. It's about 2.7 thousand that are just passively absorbing this, and no trees are dying anymore. It's a little bit weird in 2.1. You can see on the right-hand side, there's that little health indicator. It's still saying that they're fully healthy. That doesn't make any sense. I know they're dead, but I think that's just not graphically being displayed very obviously to me. But you're seeing that all these trees that are here, that are just sitting here, are absorbing just a measly 2,700 per minute. So the actual fact of replacing them is extremely important to be able to absorb this amount of pollution. So, and then again, this tile absorption is, only 1/3 here at this point, and we have a drastic drop in performance. So I don't think the meta is changing at all. And what I'll say just as a final tip here is if you're going to control it, try to, I'll make sure that this this mod is available so that you can start fine tuning it yourself. But I've seen a lot of value in minimizing the amount of agriculture towers that you have to reduce those large spikes of update time and fine tuning it just to kind of a point where you don't have an absolutely massive cloud, but you also don't have too many agriculture towers. And there's probably some min-max optimal point where you can find that. And I'll leave that up to the viewer to go and find that in your own particular save file, because my save file is absolutely ideal. I have the most moisture possible. I've got a lot of water in these areas. So this tile absorption is pristine for your general use case. Like, this is the best case for mega basing, is this type of environment. If you have a desert environment, good luck to you. Your cloud is going to be 2 or 3 times bigger than what I ever had even in this simulation. Especially if you change the tile absorption or the pollution spread. If you're on a death world, all these different things will change things for you. So I'm on default settings again for pollution control. So you're going to see worst case. So this really is the best case scenario for tile pollution to just grow forever. I guess the actual absolute best case scenario would be pure water all around. But tiles really do absorb a very, very small amount compared to what a few 20,000 or so odd trees could actually go and handle. So anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this level of research and this level of depth to this kind of video. This took me a long while to create. So if you really enjoy this kind of content, I would highly appreciate you commenting and letting me know. And also just consider subscribing to the channel. This took a long time to go and create. We had to go and create a mod to be able to go and visualize and be able to see the actual pollution cloud and go and iterate back and forth on that. So shout out again to Nabomat from my Discord for going and setting the groundwork for this particular mod. I'll hopefully have that available on the mod portal shortly after this video comes out so you can use it yourself. The actual recording of this took a real, literal 3+ days to just capture the data. Also a shout out to 3Blue1Brown for the rendering library that created some of the animations that you saw through this. I was using his actual Python library to create some of the renders that you saw that progressed things, and I really enjoyed the visuals of it, and I enjoyed the actual creation of it. So if you like that kind of style, let me know as well in the comments below. I'd appreciate to hear your thoughts. And as always, I'll have relevant links down below where you can see some of the data and some of the information about how this was created. So if you have more insights or you want to further explore this yourself, highly recommend that you tune into my Discord. That's where I talk about a lot of these things. And otherwise, I do read every single comment that comes in on a video. And if there's a question that you have, I'll do my best to answer them. And otherwise, thank you so much for watching. My name's Nasty. Have a fantastic rest of your day.